just to set this in context, this is a sermon that I would preach to my congregation from which I retired 8 years or so ago. That's a Lutheran Christian congregation, predominantly white, middle class. And I wrote this sermon as if we were preparing for our Nehemiah Action Assembly. And so that's the context. And the sermon, again, is based on the text we just looked at. Nothing will concentrate your mind like the knowledge that you will be hanged in the morning. The writer Samuel Johnson said that, and it's the truth, isn't it so? If you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that you're going to die tomorrow, your mind doesn't wander thinking trivial thoughts. If time is running out, you focus on things that matter. On the night before he was hanged by the Romans, Jesus' mind was concentrating on the things that mattered most to him, things he wanted to pass on to the ones he had just called friends. With the clock ticking, there was no time to talk about the weather or to discuss the Jerusalem Giants baseball team. He gathered in the upper room with his BFFs, his best friends forever, around his deathbed, so to speak, to tell them and show them all the important things they needed to know when he was gone. He showed them first, two things he showed them. First, he washed the disciples' feet, demonstrating the importance of acts of charity and mercy, and told them to spend their lives doing for others what he'd just done for them. And second, he shared a meal with them around a table where no one was excluded, not even Judas. Your table should always look like my table, he said. And any table where you find yourselves in the future, always ask the question, who is missing around the table? Who needs to be here? Who isn't? And then, as the night drew to a close, he had one last thing to say to them. This is my commandment, he said, that you love one another in the very same way I have loved you over the years. Love was his final word to his friends. Not just any kind of love, but a love that threatens public officials so much that they come after you to shut you up and shut you down like the Romans would do before the disciples' coffee was cold that night. So let's be clear. Let's be very, very clear. Jesus wasn't talking about the mushy emotion described in that dreamy song of the 60s. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. Come on, man. Jesus wasn't talking about that kind of love that night. He was talking about the kind of love that might get you hanged by the authorities because you challenged the status quo that they had created. In Lexington, Kentucky, sweet love is the kind of love that is content with just feeling a lump in your throat for Black and brown-skinned children in this very county who are disciplined differently in classrooms from white children for the very same behavior. Listen to me. Jesus wasn't talking about sweet love, love with a sentimental lump in its throat. He was talking about a dangerous love that goes out on a limb, willing to confront our school superintendent to enact proven discipline policies and practices that ensure that every child is treated with the dignity he or she deserves as a child of God. Jesus had bigger fish to fry that night than talking about a bless your heart kind of love that tears up when it thinks of families not having a safe place to live in Lexington. He wasn't talking about that kind of love. He was talking about a confrontational love that assembles hundreds of Jesus' friends, Christians, Jews, Muslims, and demands from our mayor and city council that they increase funding to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that we as Build fought for 6 long years to establish, a fund that can ensure that every family in our city has a safe place to live as safe a place as you and I do. The love that Jesus has on his mind and had on his mind that last night is not a sit on the couch love with a newspaper in hand, muttering in disgust when it reads the headlines about yet another teenager shot on the street. He's not talking about that kind of muttering in disgust, useless love. He's talking about an outraged love where thousands of people of faith are hopping mad and who rise up and say to public officials, listen, enough is enough. These kids' lives matter, and builds the power it takes to pressure our mayor and director of public safety to adopt a proven strategy that's worked in other cities to stop gun violence between groups of young people. Sweet love, bless your heart love, lump in the throat love, sit on the couch and mutter in disgust love, towel and wash basin love. That kind of love may be a good starting place, but it's never enough. Our congregation has a impressive history of washing the feet of people in our city, tutoring at-risk kids, serving meals to homeless folks, building 6 Habitat for Humanity houses in the last 8 years, putting thousands of dollars into our church budget to contribute to social services. Listen, you are good at washing feet. And I'm pretty good at washing feet too. At least that's what you tell me. I always show up in the wee hours of the morning if you have an emergency. I don't wait till 8 or 9 in the morning. I'm there to stand beside you at your sick bed and walk with you to the graveside, counsel you in times of confusion and perplexity. Listen, we are good at washing feet. We've gotten plaques and awards from the mayor's office. We're so good at it. But the fact of the matter is, to hear Jesus tell it, foot washing love will never solve the underlying problems in this city. If we're going to love like Jesus loved, if we're going to abide in his love, we're going to have to go where he was, do what he did. We're going to have to get used to subversive love, a Jesus kind of love, a love that isn't afraid to get angry on behalf of those on the margins of this city, angry enough to ask why the feet we wash are dirty in the first place and why they keep getting dirty after we've washed them. Angry enough to make demands, not ask permission, but make demands of those in power because we put them in elected office. They work for us. The kind of love that frankly has made some people leave this congregation and go down the street to a more comfortable church because they think Christian folks should be more polite, shouldn't make so much noise, shouldn't risk offending folks. Christians should stay in their place, they say. Now, if you hadn't noticed the elephant in the room, let me point it out. When all is said and done, Jesus' love is a political love. I mean, you hear folks say all the time, the church shouldn't get mixed up in politics. I totally agree. It shouldn't get mixed up in partisan politics. But here's the thing. Jesus was political. Google it. He had a political platform. It was very simple. God is in charge, not Caesar. That was his platform. That was his politics. You need to know, if you don't already know, the only people who got crucified by Rome were political troublemakers. Not for people who, for petty theft. It was always a slave or a political troublemaker. Folks who got out of line. Jesus was not crucified because he went about washing feet. Caesar would have given him a plaque for that. He was crucified because he went about making trouble, threatening the economic, religious, and political establishment. And Rome and Rome's allies in the religious community hanged him for it. So, as much as we might like to, we can't stay on the couch muttering. We can't be satisfied with sweet love. We can't stop with foot washing because the book, our book, says Jesus has called us his friends and commanded us to love like he loved. Abide in his love, which means following him where he was and where he went. And if the way he loved was political, we have to love like that too. And that means we're going to have to be willing to get into trouble like he got into trouble. So when we gather at the Nehemiah Action Assembly, we can expect Mayor Gorton, Superintendent of Schools, our Chief of Police, the Chamber of Commerce. They're going to push back. They're going to give all kinds of excuses of why they can't do what we want them to do. They're going to accuse us. I promise you this. They're going to accuse us of being disrespectful of them. And they're going to say we should stick with spiritual things because they're the expert in political things. Shut up and dribble, as one commentator said to LeBron James when he spoke out about Black Lives Matter. That's exactly what Pilate said to Jesus. Shut up and wash feet. Don't be surprised when our public officials tell us that. The morning after our Nehemiah Action Assembly back in 2005, the mayor called me up and said, Reverend Luckey, I thought you people were Christians. Well, you sure showed me a different kind of Christianity last night. I didn't say it, but I thought, man, new mayor, you just gave the church the best compliment I've heard in all my years in the ministry. You see, the mayor came expecting to be applauded when he entered the room, and we had prepared our assembly. Do not applaud just because he shows up. He came expecting church and synagogue folks to politely fold their hands and say, Mother, may I? And meekly take his no for an answer to our proposed affordable housing. He came expecting us to allow him to make a speech. He didn't expect that we would be so serious about the business that we would hold the microphone, literally, that we would hold the microphone when he spoke and not let it go until he gave us a simple, straight answer, yes or no, to our demands. He didn't get applause that night. He didn't hear Mother May I that night. He didn't get to make a speech that night. He didn't get to control the room that night. We controlled the room that night. We said, Mayor, you can afford and you can make money. You can decide where the money goes. You can find money to renovate Rupp Arena where the Kentucky basketball team plays, but you're telling us you can't find the money for safe, affordable housing? Tell us why you can't. We control the room. And he felt we were being disrespectful. But we weren't being disrespectful. We had simply read somewhere in this book we call holy that Jesus, on the night before he died, said, you are my friends if you do what I command. And this is my commandment, that you love one another in the same way I have loved you. We had simply, you see, we simply read the book and we behaved that night like a community of Jesus' friends, Christians and Jews, a community of Jesus' friends. We behaved like we had read the book. Amen.